Okay, it says we're live.
We are
All
live.
right. I'm going to
Woohoo.
have a quick tech check, okay, Anupa, because sometimes
Lets
it
you
won't
down.
be. Yeah, maybe my expectations are too high.
Yeah.
Yeah, it says live. Perfect. All right. So, firstly, thank you for your time, Anupa.
That's my pleasure.
Um, and I've written you down as a positive body image warrior and children's author. Do you want to maybe introduce yourself differently, or does that sit well with you?
No, that sits well with me. So I was a primary teacher for 17 years, but when obviously the pandemic hit, things changed for a lot of people. And I started to talk about my own body image journey and how sort of name calling and bullying had affected me, but I hadn't really realized, as many of us don't, until the later years, that those things start to surface and come out. And I have an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old, and my mind sort of started wondering to, do I want them to struggle with the way that they look and their appearance, and miss out on things and not do the things that they want to do because of the way that they look. And I thought, no, I don't want them to do that. So therefore, I'm going to set my mind to doing some work for them and for all of the children in the world, to support them, to make them feel better in their skin.
Gotcha. Okay. So, a couple of things you mentioned there. First one is your experience of name calling, and you used the word being bullied, and then how that surfaced later on. So, can we explore a little bit your own experience of, like you said, the name calling and the bullying? Was that very much around your sort of how you look and your body?
Yeah, so my whole sort of name and my business name and the book that I wrote is all Sparrow Legs, and that's about me having very slim legs and them always being classed as skinny, really. So my PE teacher actually gave me that nickname Sparrow Legs. I was probably about 12, and I wasn't really phased by it. It didn't upset me, because we had a good relationship. It was just the fact that it highlighted to me that that was a difference in the way that I looked, and it possibly made me feel bad about my body. But at that point, it wasn't a huge deal. I did get bullied at school. I got matchsticks put in my sandwiches. I used to get tripped over. I got called names all of the time, mostly by the boys in my form, in my class group. And I guess in a way, in those years, I sort of felt like it was just a normal, passage, rite of passage, really. That I had probably had that attitude of everyone gets teased about certain things, and I didn't maybe take it that seriously. And then through the years, things like I made friends with boys at college, I wasn't friends with girls. And I think subconsciously that was because I just felt more comfortable with boys. I didn't have to worry about the way that I looked. They weren't asking about my appearance or commenting on my appearance. But I didn't realize until I'm 43 now, and I didn't realize probably until my late 30s that those things, the way that I'd been called names or the way that I had been maybe made to feel less worthy about the way that I looked, had affected my decisions, really. Even things like, I was obviously a teacher for 17 years, but in the back of my mind, without knowing it, I always had this mindset of, well, I can't be a deputy head teacher, or I can't be a head teacher because I'm so little, and I'm like a 12 or 13-year-old. Why would anyone take me seriously? And it's silly, because why wouldn't I be able to do those jobs? I was a capable teacher, but in the back of my mind, without knowing it, those thoughts were there.
Okay. So you mentioned that you chose to befriend boys more than girls, but yet it was the boys that had been kind of taking the mickey out of you a little bit. But why did that happen?
Yeah, it's funny actually. I hadn't really even thought about that, but I think um, just because at that age, when this was more at college, so this was when I was sort of more, 16, 17, 18. By that age, girls were starting to talk about their clothes, and the conversation was quite often about appearance. What should we wear when we go out? About makeup, and
Okay.
about their bodies, or about dieting, or the way that they were eating, and none of that
Right.
really suited my personality and the way that I was. And actually, I wanted to be adventurous, and I made friends with 4 or 5 boys, and we used to go camping, and we'd walk the Pennine Way, and we used to go to pubs for Sunday lunch, and it was nothing to do with the way that I looked.
Right. Okay, so did you choose to not spend time with hey? A guy called Greg just said hey.
Hello,
Greg's
Greg.
lovely. You'd like Greg. Anyway,
My husband's called Greg.
no way, really. So, yeah, throw me off a little bit. One of the things I was going to ask you is, was your choice to not spend time around women because you didn't want to have to sort of have conversations about image and how you looked?
Well, that's the thing. That, like I said, I didn't realise till my late 30s that that had happened. So that was only really in college. But and you know, I didn't feel that comfortable around girls at university either, and sort of kept
Right.
myself to myself. I had a boyfriend, and so I'd spend my time with him, and not necessarily even try and have friendship groups. But it was a subconscious thing. It's only now, looking back, that I can put two and two together and go, oh, actually, I remember that maybe I just didn't feel very comfortable. And I felt like I probably had to, keep up with them, keep up with their beauty routines, or keep up with dressing the
Right.
right way or looking the right way to fit in. And I didn't want to do that.
You didn't want to.
No.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. No, I suppose I'm pondering on this idea that if you've got this notion that how you look isn't right or okay in some way based on what you've heard, that it does make sense that you would veer away from any environment where that is going to be a kind of a focus, because it's going to cause you to sort of bump into that discomfort a little bit, isn't it?
And I think what I also did, though, again, subconsciously, is I fell more into my attributes. So I became a bit of the class clown, and I
You
became,
used humor.
yeah, I built a sense of
It's
humor,
very
and
common,
it
that
was a
is,
bit of
isn't it?
armor, really. My humor was my
Yeah,
armor, and but I
yeah.
used to enjoy it. It isn't that I didn't enjoy it, and in a way, looking back, obviously, I don't. I wish I hadn't gone through that experience and many of the things that came with it, but it has made me the person that I am. And I think that's important to say as well, that actually all of our experiences do build us into who we are. So I'm not saying I could have done without any of those experiences, because that is my life and I wouldn't choose to delete
Mm.
any of that. But for me now, the work that I'm doing is just about being aware, making more awareness. I'm not saying that I can take away all of that, image based, appearance based bullying, or appearance based, maybe biases that we have, or the way that we view other people. But it's about building our resilience and helping our children to build theirs.
Okay, so I'm just I'm trying to get my head around the idea that you saw the name calling and bullying as something you didn't particularly like, but yet you're at this stage of saying it's not necessarily a problem because it made you who you are.
Yeah, what I mean is, for me in my life, obviously I can look back and go, oh, actually, I became charismatic and all of these other things. But
Right.
you don't have to go through all of that. So the work that I'm saying now, when I talk to parents, carers, and teachers, and I'm talking about appearance, I'm saying, let's focus on our children's attributes. Let's pick up on the things that they're really good at, or that they even try to do really well. That would have the same effect as me becoming charismatic. If somebody had pointed out all of those positives about my humor and who I was as a person, I would still probably be this person. It came about maybe in the wrong way, but I don't regret it in the sense that it has made me who I am. But we can do that in a different way with our children. We can build them up and talk about their personalities, and talk about what are they really good at, what do they really make a great effort at doing. And actually, when we build up that great self-esteem, they feel better about the bodies that they're in, they feel better about their appearance, and therefore they look after their bodies better. They eat better, they sleep better, they will be more inclined to do exercise and all of the things that we need to do to have a healthy body. And then that in turn will help them to have a better body image.
Yeah. I am with you on the, if we install things earlier on, it does make it a lot easier when people are adults, because weight loss, trying to get in shape, trying to get healthy is a big industry. And a lot of adults, unfortunately, do find it quite challenging because it's an area of, they didn't get into it when they were young, or it was an area that they felt shame or embarrassment when they were young, and they start trying to do it when they're older, and some of that stuff can start to come up. Or the other side of it is, I'm sure you've experienced this too, sometimes as adults we're not very good at change. We can get a bit stuck, a bit set in our ways, a little bit set in our sense of identity, and then trying to move outside of that, the resistance that can come up. Sometimes people are a bit against it.
It is, and it's those biases and those patterns. Like when we look at, typically for women, say, I know you work with a lot of women, and when we look at women and that sort of dieting nature, that culture is passed down. We see it from grandparent, grandma to mum to daughter, and the messages we're giving to our children. So yeah, it is about starting that work early, because actually I was talking about anti-bullying week in my group this week. And I said that 55%, this is a statistic from the Centre of Parents Research, 55% of children have been bullied about their appearance. That's over half of the children. And most of this bullying starts in school before the age of 10. And out of those children, 24% of them change the way that they eat. That's a worrying statistic at the age of 10, that if we're not putting those messages in early enough to say, actually, let's think about raising their self-esteem and their body image and their mental health, and then that all falls into place. They don't need to feel bad about the way that they look or change the way that they eat, because also we've given them good habits around the way that they eat and not restricted things. I know you're obviously going to be having a daughter soon, and for me those messages are, let's just be mindful of the language that we use, like you say, those patterns that we continue. Let's try and break that cycle, because we can do it.
Yeah. Can we explore this word bullying a little bit, please, Anupa? Because a curiosity I have is, children, in my experience, they're trying to figure out who they are in the world, how to interact in the world, and they kind of, some of it they copy. They're basically just testing out all the time, aren't they? And whether something is done purely from that space or whether it's intentionally bullying, how do you define when it's bullying and when it's just children being a little bit stupid because they don't know any better?
Yeah, I know. And it's true, and I've talked about that again, this whole sort of fine line between banter and bullying, even as adults, even as a group of men that can be having banter. Is it banter? When does it turn into that person feels really bad about that thing that you're, that you think is just banter? For example, like, again, my husband Greg has no hair like you. So, but if he's out in a group of people, say, this isn't happening, but if he's out in a group of men, his friends, and every week he's the butt of the jokes and it's about him having a bald head, when does that, when is it banter and when is it bullying? You're right, and it's hard. And I think it's really difficult also because it depends on that other person's nature and character and what they've experienced, and do they class it as banter or bullying? But I get you. With children in particular, there is that whole, and now looking back, I realized that those boys in my form group, some of them were just doing it because they thought it was funny. They wanted to make other people laugh. They thought they were doing it to fit in with their friends. I get all of that. But that's why, for me, the important piece is what we do at home and what we teach in school about what is okay to say and isn't okay to say. And there isn't going to be an exact line, but for me, it's about saying, why do we need to comment on the way that somebody looks when there's so much more that we can talk about? Is there a need to ever really say, oh, you're a bit big, or, I bet you're really an angry person because you've got red hair. Why do we need to comment on appearance when there's so much more to us as people?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Why do we need to? 100%. My curiosity is very much, you'll be able to observe this yourself, Anupa. the mind is basically a label making machine. That's what it does.
Yeah.
It just throws out labels on things. And we could argue that a lot of those labels we've picked up early on. But that's what it does. It just throws on labels. And that gives us some kind of sense of knowing where we're at and knowing what we're doing. And in order to not speak those labels, we're always going to mess up. You know, I think there's always going to be times that we mess up. And I suppose what I sometimes struggle to get my head around is if it's based on how someone else feels, then we move towards saying that my feelings are your responsibility. And I think outside of very close relationships, that's a lot of pressure to put on people. So how do we grow people's awareness around the power of language without telling people, well, you're responsible for how people feel, so watch what you say at all times?
I think, you know, first, like you say, it's about our own mind. So let's raise our children to say, you know, teaching them, my body is my own, only mine to comment on. If they know that about their own bodies, they're then less likely to say anything about somebody else's body because they know themselves that their body is theirs. So why would they then say something to someone else? And it's okay that we make mistakes. Growing up is, you know, mistakes are part of growing up anyway. So I'm not saying it's going to be 100% perfect. But if we, you know, if we're showing within our homes and within our schools the right way to be, and it isn't about, like you say, it isn't necessarily about putting that responsibility on someone else and saying my feelings are your responsibility. But if they know that for them, their feelings would be hurt if somebody commented on something to do with them, they're less likely then to comment on somebody else.
Yeah. We then have the tightrope of, if what I say wouldn't affect me, how the hell do I know it's going to affect you unless I actually speak it?
And there's going to be times where we say, you know, even with the work that I do, I look back and go, have I made comments about people? Of course I have. Have I had biases that maybe I shouldn't have? Of course I have. You know, I'm human, and until I was doing this work, I wouldn't have really set my mind to it. So everyone, I feel like, you're doing your job, I'm doing my job, and everybody I feel in this world has a role to play. And we're here just to raise awareness, to talk about the topics where we have experience, to maybe use our life experiences to make other people's life experiences better. Yeah. It's never going to be perfect, but say we move that point from being 50% in our house where we have all those biases, say all those things, and as adults, even in front of our children, we go, oh wow, that person's big, or oh, have you seen his legs? Or if we can change that needle to 80%, where, okay, occasionally we slip up because we go back into our old ways, but 80% of the time we are more aware that that language isn't just harmful for that person that we're saying it about, but for our children. And things will change for our children. You know, our bodies change, our appearances change. You know, we get bigger, we get smaller. I've given birth to 2 babies. My body has changed, you know, and as a teenager, my daughter is now experiencing skin issues. So our body is always going to be changing. So we'll always need that armor and that resilience and knowing how to behave in the right way. But it's not about being perfect. It's about moving further. And as, you know, as humans, as a society, surely our job is to make the world a better place.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, my mind just simply wanders into what's the, not like, I don't think balance personally is something that's ever sustainable because it's a constantly moving thing. Yeah. But what's the balance between, we need resilience because shit happens, no? Yeah. And if we get to this space of trying to enforce language, which I also think can be potentially dangerous, to say, well, you can only say this, you can only say this, it just drives things inwards, and I think it creates more neurosis in people. So what's the balance between, okay, we have to become resilient and we should work hard to be more mindful, be more aware of the impact that we have on one another? And it seems like a really tricky one to find the balance of, because people have a different marker.
Yeah.
You know, because I've experienced people that are very quick to say your words are the reason that I feel a certain way, as opposed to when you said that, this is what it revealed to me. You know, the way we use language can have a big impact as well, can't it?
Like you say, it is tricky because also it depends what's going on in our lives and where we're at. So for me, that piece of resilience, that piece of working on ourselves is what comes first. You know, we only have control over ourselves. So let's do what we can to control ourselves. And not everyone, like you say, is going to have that same marker. Some people are jokey, bantery people, and to them, their words, you know, aren't necessarily affecting that other person. And I think that's why if we have that resilience piece, if we have that piece that also can be, you know, clever enough to understand this person isn't intending to hurt me, or clever enough to be able to point it out and say, you know, how do we deal with it then? If that person is saying something to us that we don't like, let me have the tools aside from resilience where I can come back and say, actually, it does hurt my feelings when you say that, or not hurt my feelings, because like we talked about the other day, actually those words don't make me feel comfortable. Whatever it is for you, you know, actually I would prefer if you use the word slim rather than skinny. You know, I understand that skinny means this, but actually when you look up the word skinny, because I looked up the word skinny before I did this work, and it's really negative, the meaning of skinny. It's like, you know, it's scrawny and looking unhealthy and all these really negative connotations. So yeah, it is tricky. Like you say, language is that's a whole other subject. But I think it's important. That's why the piece about us is important. What can we do ourselves? And like you pointed out, in our close, immediate circle, that's where we're able to build that resilience. That's where we're able to do our learning. That's where we're able to be the person that we truly are. You know, and that's where we're able to have these talks about lessons and how did it make you feel. And actually, talking about language, I do say it's not about eliminating that word fat or skinny or whatever. It's not about eliminating those words. It's about using them in the right way and understanding what is the real meaning behind that word. Because often when we say fat, quite often we will mean it in a negative way. If we're using it in a descriptive way, things can be fat. We don't just say we're never going to say fat in our house, because things can be fat. But if we're saying that a person is fat and we're saying it in a negative way, then that's not kind, obviously.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. For me, I come back always to teaching.
You like to just, you know.
No, that's not. Do you feel that's what I'm doing?
No. You like to explore. That's what I was going to say. You like to you like to get to the meaning of what we're trying to say. You like to get to the nitty gritty.
Well, my experience, Anupa, has been that as soon as people firmly take one position, often what happens is they sort of close their ears to anything outside of it. And I think that is just as dangerous as bullying, to be honest. So I think it's important that we explore
I get you.
the nuances.
I get you. Obviously, like, I'm an advocate for positive body image. And if I can't see that there are going to be times where people say things that, you know, aren't meant to be hurtful, or, you know, like you said, it's not about you them wanting to intentionally hurt your feelings. But I do see all of those things. But as a teacher for positive body image, obviously I have to veer further towards that way. And for me, like I say, for me, it's just about raising that simple awareness with really young children around accepting everybody for who they are, because this isn't just about big and small. This can be people with disabilities. This can be people in the LGBTQ community. You know, there's all sorts that throws up. It isn't just a simple case of they're slim and they're fat, or they're big and they're in a smaller body, or they're overweight and underweight. It's such a big, you know, it's such a big thing when you look into it. So for me, it is just about that simple awareness, that, you know, morals of stories and sending simple messages.
Gotcha. Yeah. Let me, I will come back to this in a second. I just want to read to you some of the things. Shannon.
Okay, Shannon. Yeah, I was going to say,
a lovely lady.
Greg, but it's Shannon. Okay.
No, this is Shannon. She's watching on LinkedIn. She says, you make a great point. If our bodies continually change and you can visually see that, why is there so much resistance to acknowledging that the mind can also grow, change, and improve from what once was? But yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think that fundamentally, my answer to that, and I don't know what you would say, but for me, fundamentally, we have a sense of who we are. And when things don't match that, we have a resistance. And that
Absolutely.
sense
I
of who
mean,
we are isn't just thought processes, it's also image, surroundings being a certain way. Yeah, we have an inherent resistance to the fact that things are always changing.
absolutely. I
So
mean, if
that
you look
seems
at
to,
it, yeah, if you look at it in a simple way, we move house, and how long does it take us to get used to our new home? You know, and that's just a simple. That's not even a really huge emotional thing, but we move in, and it takes us a while because we're so used to the place that we were. But when a perfect example of that, which again is coming up for you, is when you have a child and you look in the mirror and you can't recognize this person anymore, because where has this body gone that I had? Where has this image? Because part of who you are is your appearance. It'd be like your voice completely changing and being a completely different voice, and that would be a really difficult thing to manage. So Shannon is right. Our bodies change just as much as our minds change, and our circles change, and everything changes in our lives all of the time. Why are we so resistant to our bodies changing? And I'll tell you, part of it is that society tells us that this is what we need to look like, because like you said, all that diet messaging, all the pictures that we see on television, all the social media that we scroll through, all the people that have filtered their pictures so that their skin is perfectly clear, so that they haven't got any hair, you don't see hair, those things are now seen as not normal. So when we look at the mirror and we see those things, we go, this isn't right, whereas it's the other way around. So part of it, I'm not saying that's the whole picture, I'm saying that a lot of it has come from society's ideal. And again, when you look at men and women and you look at that perfect body image, what age are you realistically going to be in that perfect body image? So for women, I would say that perfect image that we see, the pert boobs, the slim figure, the perfectly clear skin, possibly you can attain that between the age of when you finish growing, so maybe 20 till you have children, so possibly mid-20s, late 20s. That's the period of time that we have a perfect body. But for any other time, we aren't considered as having a good body image. It's bizarre.
there's whenever someone says it's because of society, that there's always a little bit of a resistance for me, because
Partly, I said partly.
yeah. and it's purely, and I have nothing against it. Honestly, I think people meet things from where they're at. For me, my message and what I'm always trying to give someone is personal responsibility. Yes, the words we use reveal what's there within another. I'm not a fan of blaming other people for feelings, personally. And whether that extends to an individual, a group, or a collective, such as a society, that we can end up saying that I can't be okay with who I am until other people speak to me in the way I want to be spoke to, until circumstances and situations are how I want them to be. And when you have so many people doing that, I think that fuels a lot of the struggles as well. So I'm always just wait.
Go on, sorry, yeah.
I'm always like, yes, I agree. We should always be working towards people being more aware of the power of language, 100%. But all communication is just as dependent upon the receiver as it is on the giver. So how we hear it is also something we can take ownership of too. So I think work in both directions, whereas the message tends to often be about what needs to change in order for me to be okay. I like to think, actually, no, it's a combination of both, what the individual can do and then what collectively can be done as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that. And when I talk about social media, I do also say the piece about sort of media literacy and teaching our children to understand what messages they're receiving and who they choose to follow or not follow, and what that does to the messages they receive. So if
Yeah,
something makes them feel bad, it's their responsibility to stop scrolling through that same person's feed that is making them feel bad. So they have to take responsibility for that. But how do you see it in terms of, so say, I mean, my daughter's not on social media, she's 12, but I'm sure there's plenty of 12-year-olds that are on social media.
hmm,
What do you think about those children then, and being influenced by what they see on social media? Because obviously they're at such a young age that personal responsibility is quite tricky, unless we've taught them how to have that. So what would you say in terms of children? Because that's where I'm coming from. Obviously, I did mention about the diet culture and about adults, and I talk as women in particular, what we see of the figures that we should have on social media. But what about when it comes to the young then?
I think we could sit and chat for quite a long time, couldn't we? So for me, okay, I tend to. I think sometimes we want to oversimplify things that are actually quite big issues. So, for example, when it comes to the area you're talking about, when we're young and we're not really sure how to be in the world, who we are in the world, we are looking left, right, and center to try and figure that out. And I think it's so deeply ingrained to want to fit in. And I don't even think that it's just a psychological thing. I think we're talking about a biological thing, that
Mm,
men want to be loved by women. So
mm,
wanting to look a way that they think is going to be desirable, it's so deeply ingrained.
mm,
And then the same for women. They would like to be desirable to men or whoever it is that they're drawn to. We want to attract a mate from a biological perspective. So I think what is collectively seen as more attractive than not, and that can change from culture to culture, 100%. But I think we are generally drawn to what is considered attractive because then we feel, then I'm going to be attractive. So that makes it a little bit more complicated in my experience. And I agree, certain social media platforms tend to advocate as close to perfection in image as possible. And then we can then compare ourselves to that and give ourselves a hard time. But again, that's on us, I think. That's down to our level of understanding about things, which I recognize that bit is something, if we learned earlier, would be very, very
mm.
powerful.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing, isn't it? Learning early, because why is it? Yeah, I get that there's certain, inbuilt, there's that inbuilt attractiveness and what we find attractive, but then surely there's a bigger piece where, we've been driven to see that people in a larger body, all these negative connotations, people in a larger body, they're greedy, they eat too much, they don't move their body, and
Mm.
all of these assumptions that we make about someone in a big body, therefore they can't be attractive. And yet for some people that is the body that they are in, and even if they did eat the same as I eat and exercised in the same way, they still wouldn't be able to get to have a slimmer body.
Is it true that they couldn't have a slimmer body? I'm not saying that they couldn't, that they could have your physique because your shape and structure, but is it true that they couldn't have a slimmer body?
I think that there will be, everyone has a
Mm.
set weight, don't they,
Yeah,
really, where your body returns to
body
when
type.
you're,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, a body type, and where your body returns to when you're eating in the way that you naturally eat, and
Yeah.
according to your hunger signals, and the way that you move your body according to how much you need to move your body. I have never weighed, apart from in pregnancy and when I traveled around Australia for a year, but that's a whole other story. Apart from those 3 times, I've never weighed more than 7 stone, and I've always wanted to be bigger. I've always wanted to be bigger. And so I feel the pain from my side where people, when I came back from Australia, I remember people saying, "Oh, you look much healthier now, you've got a couple of stone on, and you should keep that weight on." Well, it didn't stay on, because as soon as I ate the way I was meant to eat and not takeaways every day and 6 pints of beer, it was naturally going to drop off. And so I don't know. I haven't been in a larger body, so I can't 100% answer that question. But I know that there are people that are in a bigger set weight than I am, and why should my weight be perceived as better? I mean, I'm sort of on the opposite side of the spectrum, but say somebody of an 8-9 stone figure that had, what society deems as perfect. How, if we're sending that message that that's the body to be in, then that's really difficult, and when you think about, because for me it always comes back to the young. That's the bit that is really tricky for me. As adults, I understand that we can control certain things, but as children, and looking at my 12-year-old daughter and the messages she is receiving, and you're saying we have that sort of innate need to be attractive or whatever, it leads to then them having those disordered eating and changing the way that they are eating and looking. And even when it comes to looks, if we're trying to fit in, and I drive past the college where my daughter goes, and I honestly can't tell the difference sometimes between all of the girls. They all look the same. And what a sad world that is, when even our hair and our eyebrows have to look the same for us to fit in. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not saying that. For me, it comes that desire to fit in, and we can drill into that a bit more deeply. The whole desire to fit in comes from the experience of being human is one of where you feel you're separate to everything else. It doesn't feel safe to a degree, and so there's certain things that we adopt to try and fit in with our environment. So for me, as much as we can put a lot of effort and work in to try and make the environment supportive, 100%, I think that's really important. Recognizing how to meet our own needs for reassurance, approval, feeling enough as we are. I think work in that direction needs to be done as well, because without that, I think we're always going to get pulled towards trying to fit in with current trends and what's popular and things like that.
And I do see that. I see that in my house, actually. I mean, a perfect example is within my home, because my 10-year-old, he's 11, sorry, my 11-year-old and my 12-year-old, so 11-year-old son, who has my build, who has little sparrow legs, who has been commented on about his little sparrow legs, it doesn't bother him. And I think because at the moment, and I'm not saying that's always going to be the case, my 12-year-old daughter, she wears glasses like me. She sometimes gets called a geek. She's a girl that wears trousers to school, whereas a lot of her friends will have skirts and they pull them up high, like you say, to fit in, because that's what all the girls are doing. And at the moment, their sense of identity is really strong, and they have been given that message within our home that that's not what's important about them, that what's important about them is who they are as people and their character and their nature. And at the moment, that message seems to be quite strong with them, and I hope that continues. So you're right. Yeah, we play with that piece, and we try and build that within our children. And I guess that's where I'm coming from. I'm not saying I can change the world and we should change the world and we should change everything, because as I said to you, even with social media, what's going to happen? It isn't going to disappear. If anything, we're going to see more of that, where everybody looks the same. And the only way we can do that is to the people that are doing this work need to go in there and just do what we can, and raise awareness of what we can. But it isn't going away. So it's about what we do with our children and the messages that we send. And it isn't about perfection. It's just about, let's be aware that some things, yes, like the nature and nurture debate. I did psychology at university. There is that whole nature and nurture thing. But let's think about that nature bit and what we can do to make the world a better place for everybody. Because, it's not a nice world if we're always putting our worth on what we look like and our appearance, and whether we're able-bodied or not, or whether we conform to society, whether, like take Harry Styles, who obviously isn't conforming to society, and, he's happy to sort of, those gender lines are blurred with him, and he's happy to dress in dresses. And I love that, and I love that. And I would hope, he's the thing is, he is a celebrity, so he gets positive rave reviews about that. If it was someone in my village, would they get the same rave reviews about that? And I guess that's where I want us to be, to just be accepting of each other, whether it's to do with our minds, who we are as people, our experiences, what we want to do with our lives, whether we want to choose to do a certain career, and what we look like. Just be accepting of everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I do agree. Um, I'm aware that it's quite hardwired into us to be wary from a safety perspective of anything that is very different to what we're used to. And so there's always a resistance to things that are very different to what we are used to. And we can broaden this out to make it not about individuals and groups. I always think you have the structured center. So you have how things are and how they're governed, and or if you want to use the word society as it is, we've got that. And then we've got the more creative edge. So you've got the people on the fringes doing their bits and pieces, more open types a lot of the time. And one of the things that happens is there's generally a bit of a like a tussle between the structured center, like, no, we know how things function, we know how things are, this is how we're okay with it. And then you've got the creative ones, and it's presented in just people of a certain generation and the young people. So
Yeah.
that tussle between the structure and the creative edge, in my experience, is kind of always there. And I think how much we can do on an individual basis, so that yes, we have a sense of a structure as an individual. We've got a North Star on our idea of how we want to live in the world, but we're also open to change. We're open to the fact that things aren't fixed. Introducing that from a societal perspective, I always think is that's really tough. That's really tough to get people to this stage of like, well, this is how things are today, but it could change tomorrow. People can't relax with that. Everybody's going to be all over the place. So it's sort of like, okay, we have to understand that there's always going to be a structure, and it's based on what's worked in the past. So it doesn't work perfectly. And then we have the creative edge, where new things are always sort of coming in and allowing that structure itself to grow. And any growth results in there's a discomfort with the edges being stretched. And I think we can see that playing out all the time, whether it's in particular areas of focus, or whether it's within an individual, or whether it's in a larger group. So I don't see it as wrong as such. I just see it as a playing out of life.
Yeah, it is like like when we look at things like mental health and how much it's moved on, and how we're open to understanding that people can struggle with their mental health, and that there's a whole load of different mental illnesses which we would never have it would never have been the same years ago. It wasn't the same years ago. And so, yeah, like you say, those changes do come in, and it's about us doing the work to lessen that fear, I guess, of that change, and accept that there will be those differences in people and the way that they think, and even personal development and the work that you're doing. Years ago, people would have been closed to all of that. Well, why do I need to do that? And why do I need to think about what my thoughts are, and what my past is, and how that's now affecting me, and what my opinions are? And there would have been people against that. So it is always moving, and it's us learning to move with it. You're right.
Nice. Yeah, I like the way you phrase that. So what brought you to this point now? Because you mentioned at the beginning that you had these experiences at school and growing up. What was it that revealed to you that stuff is still going on and impacting you, and caused you to then move in this direction?
So so sort of in my late 30s, I had this thing in my head. I want to write a book about my experiences. Like, I feel like no one understands the other side of the coin. I've got all these messaging around larger bodies and weight stigma, and nothing to say, actually, one, you can also struggle with it in a smaller body, but it isn't even about a smaller body. Anyone, when we look at people on TV talking about social media and the people that we think are perfect, they still have their own issues, and they probably have bigger body image issues than the people in the street. So I always sort of wanted to write about it. And then when COVID hit, obviously, and I wasn't teaching, I was teaching my own children at home, but I wasn't teaching in the classroom. I just wanted something to focus on. So I started my Instagram page. And in doing that and writing the things that I was
Looks good,
writing,
by the way.
lots,
I
thank
saw
you.
your Instagram page.
Like,
You've done it in that, you've got that nice sort of mosaic format. Yeah, it looks good.
only because I got told at the beginning that that was the thing to do. But I am going to change it up a bit because my photos are black and white. And someone said to me the other day, "Why have you got?"
Nice.
Yeah, I quite like it, but then I think maybe colour is nice. But anyway, because this woman was like, "Your skin colour's so lovely. Why don't you have colour pictures?" Like, you know. So anyway, but so I started my Instagram page, and I guess it just sort of was a bit of a deep dive into like talking about my experiences and then sharing it with people that didn't know. And I had friends contacting me saying, "I never knew you felt that way. I didn't know that about you, and I know that I've said this about you, or that I've said these things." And I got an opportunity to write a chapter in a book. And that was really cathartic, you know, writing the whole journey from start to finish. And that, you know, you said that piece about men wanting to be loved, and I wanted to be loved, and I felt unworthy of love. And then when I found my husband and got married, things changed for me as well. And that's when I sort of had this little acceptance bit of the body that I was in a lot more, because I was accepted by somebody else, but I needed to accept me. And I learned that along the way. So yeah, it was mainly in my late 30s I had this image, but then when I started my Instagram last April, that's when it came to a head, and then wrote this collaborative story that came out in December, and then it was out there for family and friends and everyone to read. And that's where it started for me. And then, like I said, that piece of my children, you know, and being a mother and having that responsibility weighing on you, and it isn't my responsibility. Yes, they are their own people and they will forge their own way, but it's for me to guide them, and it's for me to support them, and it's for me to help them. And so that's a heavy weight which you will feel, you know, and you want to do the best things, but you have your own past and your own feelings to deal with, and sometimes you don't even feel like an adult yourself, you know, you don't feel that you're grown up enough to have this responsibility. And it's that then makes you realize what change maybe you would like to see, you know, which change would you like to be in the world, that we said around that fringe of change. Well, what can I add to this world to make it a better place? Because I'm here for a reason, and maybe this is it.
Yeah, I think things become a bit simpler for us individually when we kind of recognize it's not about us. Yeah, and what we've got to offer, what we've got to give. One question that just come up as you were talking then, you're 43, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm thinking of the period that you would have grown up in. Did you have to deal at all with racism?
Not really. I mean, I did grow up in a very white area, and you know, and I went to school. It was a mix in my school, in my secondary school, really. But no, I wouldn't say that's something that I recognised. I did, you know, I kind of did feel it on the outskirts. I personally didn't experience any racism, but I know it was hard for my parents, and we had our grandparents living with us, and you did feel different. You did feel a little bit different. And there was that pull. I'm a British girl, and yet my family, or, you know, even my parents weren't born in this country. So it does feel very different. But I didn't experience racism. I can't say that personally I experienced racism.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Okay, so what would you say then, if we can take away like 3 points, right?
Oh gosh.
No, like there's been a few things. Like one of the things that jumps out to me is you pointed out about how you and your husband are with your children has enabled them to sort of be pretty comfortable within their own skin. So if we start from the individual, home, and then larger, from an individual perspective, I mean, I know it's tricky when we're talking about younger people, you know, but from an individual perspective, what would you promote people can do to just be happy in the skin that they're in?
You know what? You say that about it's tricky with the young, but the individual piece for me at the moment is our piece as adults. I think until we work on our biases and, you know, untie what is the language that we use, and actually, am I just dieting because my mum dieted, and is this rule exist because my parents said it to me? Because I even looked at the things I say, and I have said to my children, can you finish everything on your plate, please? Why? I'm not hungry anymore. There are these messages that we've had sent down to us. So for me, that individual piece isn't actually to do with the young. Let's look at us first. What are your biases? Do your children do your children hear you say things? Do they hear you go, oh, Auntie so-and-so's put on a bit of weight, hasn't she? Whether you're saying it to your husband and not to your children isn't the point. They will hear that, and they will then come to put those two together. Someone putting on weight is a negative thing, and that we're allowed to talk about it, and we're allowed to comment on it, and behind their back, it's not kind. So I think that individual piece is us. Let's work on us.
All right. So just a quick question on that. Is someone putting on weight in your mind then a positive thing?
I think it's different in every circumstance, isn't it? So for me, putting on weight is a positive thing. I love being 2 stone bigger. And I also think we have to be careful with this weight thing, because people might lose weight because they've had a bereavement. People might lose weight because they have a disorder. People might lose weight because they're really sad and depressed and anxious. So when we say positively to somebody, oh, wow, you look great, have you lost weight? We don't know the reasons behind that weight loss. So I think...
But it can be the same in the other direction too.
And it can be the same in the other direction. So I don't think that weight is something that we need to comment on. And I think it's for that person to know why they've put on weight or lost weight.
Is weight, to a degree, a marker of someone's health?
That's a really tricky one. And I think, because again, I have to be careful because I don't live in a larger body. So for me to go around saying, oh, if you're in a larger body, you're unhealthy, I think it's individual to everybody. And you've got to consider things like other illnesses. You may have diabetes, you may have thyroid issues. I have a friend that has thyroid issues and therefore struggles with her weight because that's a medical condition. So I think, we can't judge by looking at somebody. And I think this has become an issue within the medical profession. And I had it the other way around for being tiny. When I went with my pregnancies, I got told how underweight I was, how my BMI was too low, how I'd have to have lots of extra scans. They were worried that my babies would be born underweight. And they weren't. Well, they were, but only because I was a month early with both of them and they were a really good weight. And they just said, that's your gestation. You've got an 8-month gestation. But, that weight stigma that exists within, even the medical professional, the way that people aren't treated the same. So I don't think that weight is a direct link to health. I do think we have to be aware, again, as individuals, if our weight is affecting our health, that's for us to take care of that and make sure that we're doing what we need to. If I knew that I had put on a lot of weight and that was affecting the way that I walk or affecting, the way that I can move my body, then I would need to do something about that. Or I got, a letter from the doctor that said I've got a condition that is because of my weight, then, but I don't think we can directly correlate it.
Okay. So it's not, because I would put forward the idea that weight is a marker of health on some level. I'm not saying it means someone's mentally and emotionally in the perfect place, but from a physical perspective, it can be a marker of
and I agree that it can be a marker. But when you look at me, and I've only ever been 7 stone, and there's a time, not so much now that I'm in my 40s, but there was a time where I probably could eat and drink whatever I wanted to, then that wouldn't make me healthy. And somebody would probably look at me and say, oh, you're okay, you can eat what you like, you're really healthy. And actually inside anything could be happening.
No, I understand. It seems like with so many subjects that as much as we want to simplify things to give ourselves some sense of, I know all about it, usually they're a lot more complex, aren't they?
I think that's the thing. And when even with the stuff that I'm doing, like you say, we don't know which children are going to struggle with words being said to them and which aren't. We don't know which children are going to continue the cycle that happens in their home and which aren't. We don't know any of those things. All we can do is our bit. So, yeah, if we move on to sort of the home then, and the peace within the home, again, it is about us and look into what we do. But just bringing our children up to have a strong identity. Who are they as people? And let's concentrate on doing doing the things that we need to for them to be good people. We do like gratitudes every day. We talk about gratitudes every morning when we're having breakfast. And this isn't the be all and end all. I'm not saying every family needs to do this and that I'm a blueprint for the perfect family. I'm just saying we just don't concentrate on the way that our children look. We don't. In fact, my auntie did say to my son the other day when we were around, and she said, "Oh, whenever she sees him, she always says, 'Oh, you've lost weight, Aiden. Have you lost weight?'" And when we came home, he said, "Why does she always say that to me?" And I did say, we can't control what other people say. And sometimes they're just saying it to fill an awkward silence. Sometimes they're just saying it because it's just natural when we go into a room to go, "Oh, you look great," or, "Oh, have you done something with your hair," or whatever it might be. And so it was, it's obviously teaching. It was a teaching point for me within our home. So it's about also raising those teaching points. Like I said, when we're looking at social media, question things that we see on TV. Does that look like it represents all of the people that we see out in our village, or do you think there's certain types of people that are chosen for this show, and why do we think that? So it's raising those questions, being careful with our language as much as we can, because yes, certain things come naturally, like finish everything on your plate, but then we have to delve into that a little bit and think, do they really need to finish everything on their plate, or should we let them trust their bodies and understand that they are hungry and full? And actually, even if they say that they don't want everything on their plate and then they go for something else afterwards, do we say that's a bad thing, or do we allow them to have those decisions and make those decisions? Because then as adults they can make those choices themselves and grow into knowing their own instincts and trusting their hunger.
What we seem to be arriving at or concluding on is that we have to address our shit.
Absolutely.
We have to address our shit. And as you were talking about some of the things that you found yourself saying to your children, like finish everything on your plate, and realizing where that comes from, it sort of makes me question, if you're not aware of your own issues, you're going to see them in your children.
Absolutely. And that's why, absolutely. And so in my group of parents, carers and teachers, a lot of the stuff that I do, because people say, a lot of this is aimed at us and not the children. I go, yeah, too right, it's aimed at you, because you need to look at yourself. And, did bullying affect you? Did you look at your mum saying, you have to have a green day and a red day? Don't ask me what they are. I just know that I've heard about green days and red days when they come to food. I don't know. I think it's Slimming World or Weight Watchers or something. Does that mean that you now think you can't eat, meat and carbs together, or whatever it might be? And if you're doing that and you're then passing that on to your kids, it's dangerous, isn't it? It's a dangerous path that we're going down. And we do have to own our own shit. And actually, I have to say to people, do you really believe in the diet culture? Are you really trusting in this culture? And is that good for your body and your mental health and your well-being, that you're not allowed a treat? And even the fact that we call it a treat, we are allowed to eat the things that we enjoy. We are allowed to have a life within reason. But it comes down to this balance, which is not always easy. And we sometimes eat a bit more of something because we're not in a great place, or we eat a bit less because we're not feeling very well. But we do have to trust our bodies a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, I think our bodies are a lot smarter than the sense of character in there, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so let me just read with you a couple of the things that have been shared. Really interesting conversation. Zoe said that. Zoe's lovely. Naomi says, I'm fully on board with people being fully aware of the impact of their words. I'd agree with that. I would just emphasize, make sure you're aware of the effect of the words you have that you use on yourself as well. The focus is often on the outward, but how you speak to yourself has a my experience, is a big area.
Mm.
That little voice in your head that sounds a little bit like you, so you believe it. Then Naomi also said, I'm fully on board with people being aware of the impact that their words can have. She wrote quite a long comment here, have on people. The other side to this, though, is building the resiliency of each individual to be okay with what others say and having the ability to not take those opinions of others on board. People are allowed to say whatever they want. It's the individual's choice to take it as truth. Build up the individuals rather than expecting society to change for them. And that's the whole the dance of it, isn't it? Like we were talking about with the creative edge and the structured center. We have to be able to stand on our own feet and figure out what we're going to do with our life in the world. And at the same time, there's always going to be things darting in and out that challenge that. And if we don't learn how to deal with that, a lot of problems can arise, can't they?
Yeah, I agree. And you know, in terms of my children, like I said, you know, their self-image at the moment is great, but that's not to say it will stay. And I do send that message to them that you won't always like the things that people say to you. And you may get comments, and in particular, obviously, we're talking about body image, you may get comments about your appearance or what you look like. And what you need to do is think about, am I looking this way to serve another person? Am I looking this way because, you know, am I wearing leopard print because I want Danny to go, oh, that's nice, her leopard print? Or am I wearing it because I want to wear it? The reason I'm wearing it, I'll tell your audience, is because the other day when we chatted, we turned up, didn't we, on the chat, and we were wearing the same similar clothes. And I thought, today I'm going to put it to the universe. I'm going to wear my leopard print. I'm going to turn up and see if Danny turns up in some leopard print. You didn't. You disappointed me.
Yeah. No, I'd like to get a giraffe print jumper or something at some point. I like giraffe print.
Yeah, I like that.
I'd like to get some clothing in giraffe print.
There you go.
It's a little bit less common. I haven't seen it very much.
Oh, put it on your Christmas list. You never know.
Put it on a Christmas list. I'm not thinking about much for Christmas, to be honest, because the baby's arriving.
Yeah, you're getting the biggest present ever.
Yeah. I've completely forgotten what we're talking about. I'll be
totally honest. It's because you're now going into dad mode, like, oh my God, it's happening.
Yeah, exactly.
No, we were just saying that it is about building the resilience. It is about building our children. It is about building ourselves. And this whole world is about working on ourselves. This whole life is about working on us to make ourselves the best people. But we have no control over social media. We have no control over others. In the end of the day, we don't even have control. I don't even have full control over my kids. I certainly don't have control over my husband. The only person who I can control is myself. And so that's the important bit. But I say to my children, when you're thinking about your clothes or your appearance or your hair or whatever it might be, do it for the right reason. Don't do it because you want to impress your best friend at school. Like you said, yes, there is that bit of fitting in. And to a certain degree, I also say to my children, if it makes you feel more comfortable because everybody is wearing a hoodie and so you don't want to go in a dress, then that's fine. If you say, well, today I don't mind if you're not going out to buy that hoodie, especially to wear, but you've got one and you wanted to wear a dress, but today I'm just going to wear a hoodie because I know that all my friends are going to wear a hoodie to this thing. I think that's different to changing the whole way of who you are to fit in to somebody else. So if my daughter was every day wearing a skirt and pulling it up and feeling uncomfortable wearing tights and a skirt just because she wanted to fit in with her peer group, that would be very different. If she does it on one day because there's an event and she feels more comfortable doing that, absolutely go for it.
What if she was happy to do that?
Oh, if she was happy to wear a skirt and tights, yeah, that's fine. I say to them, you do what makes you happy. If they want to, like my son has never been into football. And I know lots of his friends and all of his peer group and all of the boys literally in his year, because he's year 6 now, play football. He's not bothered. And that's fine. And I think that's strength of character, that shows strength of character, that he can step back and go, well, I'm not really that bothered. So I'm not going to get into it for the sake of it, And so it is tricky. Like I said, as parents, I'm not here to control them. I'm here to guide them and the best I can. And I have no clue because there isn't a parenting handbook. And I will support them the best I can. But, when my daughter goes to college or university, maybe she will do more of that appearance to please others. Maybe she will do more of that. And all I can do is provide her with the knowledge that I have and the experiences that I have.
Yeah. So I think the kind of common ground that we arrive at is that fundamentally we can address our part as best as we're able to, and if we recognize that we need help, ask for it. I just want to add that bit in, because I know people can get stuck in a wheel for a long time, and then share those learnings with others. But also I think it's important to let go of the idea that we can make it all change. If we can just impact the sphere of influence that we have, there's a lot of individuals in the world. So if the individual makes an effort, that's a lot of spheres that start to get impacted, isn't it?
And I love that sort of knock-on effect, and that's what it is, and that's what we need to do, is have that knock-on effect. To be honest, my job is done. If my children are already getting the benefit of the work that I'm doing, and I see that in them, then for me, my heart's full, if that's the only impact it's going to have. If I can spread it to more families and more children and more people, then, that's brilliant. And like I say, in my group, lots of people, parents, carers, teachers say, oh, wow, I hadn't thought about that. Or that didn't even really cross my mind, and so it is raising their awareness. And if that little bit of awareness is tweaked, then I think that's job done,
Gotcha. Okay. So, Anupa, how would people get in contact with you if they're interested in learning more about how they can help their children with body image, or better understanding themselves around body image? How would they get in contact with you?
Absolutely. So I am on Instagram as Miss Sparrowlegs. I have a Facebook group.
Lend yourself the thing that you were.
Well, no, because I couldn't get Sparrowlegs, and the only one that was free was Miss Sparrowlegs. So I don't mind being Miss Sparrowlegs. So yeah, and then my Facebook group is Sparrowlegs, and I have a website which I've only just started, which is
Who visits websites though?
I know. Well, I was told it's good to have a website so that people.
Yeah, people say that. But I think unless you've got a product or something, unless you're actually searching for something, are that many people online searching for positive body image teacher? Maybe they are.
Maybe, I like to look at people's websites just because I'm nosy.
Yeah.
And what other people have also said, so bear in mind, any audience that are listening, what other people have also said is we don't know that social media is going to stick around. We don't know about Facebook and Instagram and StreamYard and whatever else. So it's just, to be honest, my friend did it for me. So it's there. And I may add things to it, because what I want to do is I'm putting together a little mini course about body image, and it will just be basic things like the way that we talk and behave about food, the way that we talk about. Hopefully early next year. So early next year. And
how many days is this course? Is it like?
Well, it's just going to be for now, while I am also, because what I want people to know is this work is coming out of my own lived experiences and my passion and my vision. It's not, I'm not claiming to have all the answers, but I'm doing a lot of research. I'm looking things up, which we all do, and making my knowledge more so that I can serve others. But it is only going to probably be just like an hour's thing that people can just plug into and listen. It'll be video based, so it'll be me mainly talking, share a few PDFs, basic topics, media literacy, talk about food, talking about how we can speak to our children, etc., and hopefully available early next year. But I want to run that course through my website, which is which is also a reason to have the website, so that people can just click on and it makes it a bit easier for people to pay on there. And
okay, gotcha. So it's going to be a paid course.
Just it won't be expensive. I don't know how much yet, but it won't be.
Charge your worth.
It won't be too expensive. Okay, well, you can let me know what my worth is when we come off this call.
All right, listen, Anupa, thank you so much for your time. Okay, if you just wait around, I'll just bring it off. So
no worries.
Thanks for your time. I'm gonna get off the live feed now.
Yeah.